Optimal health for high performers. This is the Health Upgrade Podcast with Dr. Nawaz Habib.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Health Upgrade Podcast. This is Dr. Habib, and I'm here with a friend of mine, fellow Toronto friend. We've had you on before, Andrea, and we're really excited to have you here. It's Andrea Donsky, a really good friend of mine.
So nice to be here. So nice to see you again, and happy to be on your podcast.
Yeah, we're excited to chat today about your new upcoming book called Nourishing Menopause. And we're really excited about this because you've taken a slightly different approach towards understanding what menopause is and how we can work to optimize functionality for women that are going through this challenge, through this change, which is where you start off with the book. I want to start off by asking you what prompted you to write the book in the first place. Was there personal experience? Was there work with the research organization, with Morphus, or was this something that came from somewhere else completely?
I would say all of the above. I mean, truly, I would say probably the biggest thing was personal experience. And I'm the type of person that when I go through things or I learn something, I love to share it with everyone else. It's just kind of who I am. I'm like, oh, I learned something great. Now let me share it with everybody that's around me in the same phase of life. So when I started studying perimenopause and menopause about 10 years ago, so it's like 9 or 10 years ago, I started because I knew nothing coming into it. I know last time that I was on, it was like, it took me by surprise. I had no idea that I was in perimenopause. I now know that I was in perimenopause for a total of 14 years, 11 of which I actually had no idea. So if we think about that for a minute, and I'm not the only person that was experienced something like it, right? So many of us of our Gen X generation, that we didn't know what was happening to us. It came to us by surprise, and we had to learn it ourselves. So when I went through that much time not knowing what was happening to my body, thinking I was going crazy, thinking that something took over me, I had no idea who I was anymore. And I did it primarily alone because I didn't have the support network and I didn't have the knowledge to understand what was happening to me. So I would say, number one, I didn't want other women to go through what I went through. And then all the research that I do, I'm now published 7 times as a published menopause researcher, which is very exciting. I'm going to submit more this year. And to me, understanding what women are going through, understanding their symptoms, understanding what they're experiencing when they go to a healthcare provider, all of that helps me to better understand what every woman in perimenopause and menopause is experiencing, and then how can we help them? How can we provide them with solutions? How can we provide them with education, knowledge, so that they don't feel alone and that they know that what they're feeling is real, we support them, and then they feel validated. So I would say that's a big component of it as well. So for me, I've been in the health and wellness space for 26 years. I have a lot of information inside this brain. So I was like, you know what? I know so much. And the woman who wrote the book with me, her name is Lisa Tsakos. She's a nutritionist. She actually taught me in school. We're around the same age. We're both nutritionists. I'm for over 20 years. She's over 25 years. So we were like, you know what? It's time that we put together another book. We co-authored actually Unjunk Your Junk Food in 2011. So we wrote another book together. And I'm like, you know what? There's another book in me. And having Lisa by my side to be able to explain our research, nutrition, and go over areas that are not necessarily spoken of as much as you may see with other experts, I thought it's time to have a book like Nourishing Menopause on the market.
I think it makes so much sense. And I really do want to point out that you've focused on a lot of nutrition, not just from a nutrition diet perspective, like food, but from an overarching, how do we nourish and provide optimal nutrition to you through this entire space, through lifestyle and diet. And we want to get into those. But before we get into the practical tools, and this is something that we talked about the last time you were on, was that your research showed that there were over 100, actually over 103 signs and symptoms of perimenopause. And a lot of them are more common. There's a few that most people tend to experience. And then there are some more surprising ones. Let's talk about kind of both of these signs and symptoms that people experience as they're going through these peri and postmenopausal changes.
Sure. So for me, it was really important that we understand what those symptoms are, because had I known what the symptoms are of perimenopause, or had I known even it was all tied in together, then I would have done things very differently when I was going through it. I had my third baby at 41. And then at 42, like I didn't go back to the way I was, like from a perspective of like moods and sleep. And in fact, things were getting worse. My anxiety was getting worse. And had I known that it could possibly be perimenopausal symptoms, then it would have saved me a lot of health anxiety, number one, a lot of time, a lot of money. Like, so everything all together would have saved me a lot. So I thought, it would be great to do research on the signs and symptoms of menopause. And I was at a party with my husband many years ago, and I ran into this woman who was creating an app for menopause symptoms. And she was like, telling me what she was doing. And I was like, wait, an app for menopause symptoms? Like, don't you need a lot of symptoms? Like, to me, in my mind, there were like hot flashes and night sweats, right? Like, I didn't really know. And she's like, no, Andrea, there's like 34 to 40 symptoms. I'm like, okay, amazing. So I'm very analytical. I'm very data driven. I came home, I started this document, and I soon realized that there were way more than even 35 to 40. There were like 85 plus. And I thought, you know what? Let's actually go to the women in our community. I have an amazing community on TikTok and our Facebook and on Instagram. And I was like, let's go to our community and ask them what they're experiencing. And we found out that there's now 103 plus symptoms. And this was published in the journal Menopause in December of 2024. So we are the second ever quantifiable number of symptoms that have been published since the 1970s.
I think that's both amazing and absurd that there hasn't been other research done since the 70s, really, to point out that people are experiencing these things. And now I think there is a benefit to social media having brought perimenopause back to the forefront, for having amazing doctors like one of the people who wrote the foreword for the book, Carrie Jones, who's a great friend of mine, having these clinicians out there speaking about not only their own experience, but clinical research, like all of these very important things, that how do we bring these things to people so they can optimize through these challenges. So you talked about the night sweats, hot flashes. Sleep obviously is a huge, very common disturbed symptom of perimenopause. What about some symptoms that were quite surprising to you, things that you didn't realize were going to be in that? Because you mentioned that your co-author previously had talked about 30, 40 different symptoms, or the lady with the app,
Yeah.
and 30 or 40 different symptoms or signs. But we're over 103. Like, there's a significantly greater number. So talk about some of the surprising ones.
Absolutely. I would say the biggest one for me was something called phantom smells or phantosmia. And now there could be a lot of reasons for it. And so phantom smells are when you smell things that aren't really, they don't exist in your environment. So for example, you might be smelling gasoline or smoke or burnt rubber or cheap perfume or skunk, or even good things. Like, there are some women who've told me they smell chocolate chip cookies and blueberry muffins. I'm like, I am so jealous because I did not have those. If you're going to have, phantom smells, it would be nice to have the chicken soup and the blueberry muffins. But so these are, I would say that would be the biggest one. And it always surprises women when I mention it as well, because we have a survey on phantom smells that's not published yet. And we dug into what's the number one smell that women in perimenopause and menopause are smelling that don't actually exist in your environment, and it's burning. So something burning plastic. It could be smoke. It could be cigar. It could be campfire. It can be cigarettes. So it can be anything that's burning, and that's the number one smell. And women are like, "What? Yes, I'm smelling that all the time." Or gasoline, or it could be even poop. It can be cat poop and dog poop. So really interesting different smells: burnt toast, burnt coffee. And then I would also say things like body odor. So this was something else that I had a lot of in perimenopause. And I always thought it was like, is it the materials I'm wearing? What's going on? And how come my left armpit smells more than my right armpit? So BO is another one that is a very common symptom, but yet not very widely known. And then we have itchy ears. That's another one. And that's what it happens because as estrogen falls, our skin starts to dry up, and including the mucous membranes in our ears. So you might have, and we're talking not on the outside, but in the inside of the ears, where you're trying to get to it, but it's so hard to get to it. So itchy ears is another one. And then we've got tinnitus and vertigo, which another thing I had for 6 weeks. So it's all these symptoms now looking back, I'm like, yeah, that surprised me because I had no idea they were connected to perimenopause and menopause. And to your point, what you said before, if it's okay with you, I'd love to even say what the top 5 most common symptoms are, because one of them is something you speak about all the time. So number 1 is fatigue. So ladies, if you are feeling exhausted, and I'm talking mentally, physically, you just can't get out of bed, There could be lots of reasons for it. Of course, please go to your doctor, get some blood work done. But, so we always want to find out what it is. But exhaustion, number one. Number two is brain fog. Number three are sleep issues. Number four are memory problems. And number five is anxiety.
Yeah, these are quite common. And I think it's important that people know that there is a reason behind these things. And you mentioned this earlier. I think this is a really important thing for people to understand, that when you have these health struggles occurring, oftentimes it triggers a greater sense of anxiety around your health. And this is that health anxiety that a lot of people, not just women, but a lot of women in particular, are feeling. And there's a heightened sense of sensitivity and a heightened sense of worry and stress around these challenges and these changes, because these are symptoms that are new, they're unexplained or seemingly unexplained, and you're just wondering, like, what is happening here? Why can't I just fix this? I used to be able to fix this issue in a couple of days, and now I'm dealing with this for weeks and months on end, and it's driving people crazy. Can you talk about the effect of not realizing that these symptoms are tied to perimenopause and how it does trigger this health anxiety, and what the effect of that health anxiety can be for a lot of the people that are going through this?
I mean, I can speak about it personally because it affected me big time. And, I felt very isolated. I felt very uninformed. And given the fact that at that point, 17 years in, I was a health and wellness educator. Like, this is what I did for a living. So for me, and I talk about this in the book, it had a particularly severe impact on me because I felt very guilty. I felt very like, how come I don't know about this? How come I'm not able to help women? Like, this is something I should know about because it's my job to help women understand their bodies, what we're putting in and on our bodies. So I had a lot of guilt around it because I just thought I should know better. But then when I do the work and I wrote my book and I'm like, but wait, I didn't know about it because my mom never spoke to me about it. My doctor never spoke to me about it. I never learned about it in school. It wasn't something we discussed amongst my peers, my friends. Like, I remember really well in like 2016, before I even had my first hot flash, I think my rage was like out of control. My mood swings, my weight, it would fluctuate. One day I would go up 10 pounds, the next day I'd go down 10 pounds. And this would happen. This happened for years. This went on. And then eventually I just gained 20 pounds. So there were so many unexplained things that were happening to my body that I would ask my friends and they would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So whether or not maybe they were like me and didn't really realize it, or maybe they were embarrassed. I mean, now we know it's an embarrassing time of life for sure, for so many of us. But I find that now that it's becoming more something we're speaking about, and it's nice to see so many of us are screaming it from the rooftops, that we're hoping that it becomes less of a stigma. We have a survey on it too, actually, that it is becoming less of a stigma because more and more of us are open to talking about it. But a lot of us are selective with who we talk about it to. Right? So we're not out there talking to everyone and anyone about it. So we're we know that the stigma is going away. And the more we speak about it, especially for ourselves, the more we see it on social media, the more we read books like my book, Nourishing Menopause, and others, the more we realize that it's a natural time of our life. And any woman who's blessed to live long enough will go through menopause. 51% of the population will go through menopause. And it is my goal to help educate women so they are not taken by surprise and they understand what's happening to their body as they enter into this new phase. Because as much as we hear a lot of the negative that goes on around it, there's a lot of positive around going into menopause and getting into our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, 70s, and beyond. So it's really, I'm very passionate about it because I want women, A, not to go through what I went through, but B, to understand that there's so much hope as we do go into this phase of life, even if you're experiencing several of the symptoms.
It can be very challenging for people to reframe it in a positive light. And I love that you're doing that. But I would love for you to talk about how you can reframe into a lot of these positive, uplifting, really great kind of things to look forward to as you go through this time, right? And it can be health related, but it can also be spiritual. It can be emotional. It can be in every single way. And obviously this is something that I'm not going to experience in my life personally, but I have 2 daughters, I have a wife, a mother, people around me are going to, and I want to make sure that I'm there to support them along the way as well. So what are some things that we can do to help reframe from somebody who's in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're starting to worry about these things, and they're starting to experience some of these perimenopausal initial symptoms. And there's almost like this negative connotation around, oh my goodness, I'm going into this. Let's do some reframing there for those people.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with some research. So my book is very much based on research, as I'm sure you saw when you read it. So not only my own research, but just research in general. So we actually have, like, in chapter 12, I have a whole chapter around mindset, self-love, self-care. So it's a very big part of nourishing menopause. And that's why we call the book Nourishing Menopause. Simon & Schuster and I, we were on the same page the whole time, which is what I loved about this whole process of writing the book, is like we wanted to make sure that nourishing menopause meant nourishing mind, body, spirit. It wasn't just nourishing ourselves with food. It was nourishing every aspect of ourselves. And you're right. No, you're right, Dr. Habib. Like, a lot of people, when we think about menopause, me included, was hot flashes, night sweats, oh my gosh, suffering. And when we're going through it, by the way, because I did for many, many years, it is very hard to see the light at that end of that tunnel because you are suffering tremendously. I mean, I couldn't even get out of bed many days. And I suffered, like I said, for 11 out of 14 years and had no idea what was going on. So I understand, for those of you who are going through it and feel like you have no motivation, you can't get out of bed, you're exhausted, your hot flashes are really taking over. I get it. And I want you to know, though, that what I didn't know back then is that there's so many things we could do. Like, nowadays, we know that there is the option of hormones, if that's something that you choose, and I don't even like the and we want to look at diet. We want to look at nutrition. We want to look at lifestyle. How are we managing our stress? I'm published on stress, actually, in terms of understanding stress for women in perimenopause and menopause. We know women are more stressed now than they were before. 66% of us are more stressed now than before, and we are less able to cope with it. So there are things that we could do when it comes to nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, mindset. Research shows that when we think that we're going to have a terrible menopause journey, we will have a terrible menopause journey. So our mindset does set the stage for a lot of what we experience. Now, it's not everything. Nutrition plays a role, lifestyle plays a role. Like, there's so many different things that play a role, but it is one of the factors that factor into how we're going to experience it. So I really want you to understand that if you are in the depth of, the awful symptoms, which we get any of those. And by the way, our research also shows that on average, women experience 31 symptoms total on average. And that's per woman. Like, that's a lot of symptoms.
And
right?
that's just the average. Like, that's a crazy number to think of. That's the average, because you're talking, some people have like 6 and some people have like 60. So that's crazy.
And it's based on 5,200 women. That's not just based on 200. 5,200 women. So we know on average, we're experiencing 31 different symptoms. So it's very taxing on our emotional and mental health, physical health, like all of that. So, but the thing is that there is hope now. You don't have to suffer. There are so many incredible practitioners, doctors who understand menopause. Speak to your doctor if you're in the perimenopause stage, anywhere after like mid-30s, even earlier 30s. If you're starting to notice changes in your body, please go to a doctor that understands menopause. Speak to them about the option possibly of certain hormones, maybe progesterone, maybe estrogen, maybe both. So there's things that you can look into, and start to look at what you're eating. Start to look at how you're exercising. Looking back now, if there was one thing that I could change, knowing what I know now, and I don't know if this was a question you were going to ask me, but I'm going to just say that I want to share it because it's such an important thing to say, is that I wish I understood that what I was eating can affect me and how I can experience how I would experience possible symptoms. So I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. I didn't know back then, when I was told I had it at 18, that it's a metabolic issue. Had I known that we now know women are more prone to insulin resistance as we go into this phase of life, had I known that, I would have looked, and I was already in the health world. I was already eating whole foods. I was already doing certain things, but I would have focused way more on insulin and blood sugar. So we know that food is the foundation for everything. You can't out-supplement or out-hormone poor nutrition, right? So it has to be the ground, kind of like the foundation of what we look at. So food, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset, and or hormones, again, if that's something you choose to do. So there's hope.
You've dedicated, I think, one full chapter to each of those areas. And I would love to dig in on each of them just a little bit, because I want to give a little bit of practical info to our listeners and recommendations that they can take on right away. And then when they're ready to dig deeper, the book is available to do so. So let's first talk about gut health. I think there's a huge piece here. And when you talk about nutrition, diet, food, there's a direct tie here to gut health. Talk a little bit about how your nutrition affects your gut health, your microbiome, and how that relates to menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms.
Yeah. So a lot of women, as we go into perimenopause and menopause, they notice that things start to shift and change when it comes to gut health. So before this phase of life, you were able to eat everything and anything. Now you can't, because possibly it's giving you gas, bloating, indigestion. You're more constipated, maybe your stools are a little bit looser. So we have to look at changing how we did things before, including what we were eating, including our nutrition. And some women are much more prone now to more sensitivities, and maybe you could, eat something before, but now it's causing your nose to run, or maybe it's causing some other type of, it could be a digestive upset, or it can even be something in your brain. It can be something that's, maybe it makes you more moody, right? This doesn't necessarily only have to be a physical thing. It could be a mental, emotional thing. So it's really important that we look at gut health. I always say that there are two things that we need to focus on when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, two main things. So nutrition, we talked about digestion, and then sleep. Those are very important places to start, because all of those trickle into other areas of our life. And that's why I dedicated an entire chapter just on sleep, a entire chapter just on managing stress, an entire chapter just on digestion. So digestion is really important because it's one of the top symptoms. It's in the top 11 symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. It affects our weight. A lot of women, 50% of women in this phase of life have weight gain or changes in how their body is holding on to weight. And that also affects us mentally and emotionally, right? So it takes a toll on us, but also it affects our bathroom habits. Are you going to the bathroom? When we eat things, our body metabolizes our food, it metabolizes our hormones. These are important things that need to come out of our body. How is our body getting rid of things that we no longer need? So we want our body, our digestive system, to be a well-oiled machine, because as our hormone levels are changing, our gut is changing too. Our microbiome is changing. The bacteria, the good bacteria in our gut is changing. And we know things like stress and anxiety can affect the ratio of that healthy to not so healthy bacteria in our gut. And now researchers are looking at how do they affect us, the bacteria in our gut, right? Long-term, for longevity, for brain health, for overall health. So it's important that we really focus on digestion. And one of the key takeaways for me for when it comes to digestion is making sure you're getting enough fiber. It's one of how are we going to do this? You're listening to this today. It's what's my takeaway? Please make sure that you're eating enough fiber. Try to get 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day, because what fiber does is it helps to move things along the digestive tract. It helps us eliminate what we no longer need. And it helps to keep us full. And it helps to do a sweep in the colon, which is so great. And it also helps us if you're having soluble fiber. It helps us absorb our nutrients better. A lot of us don't absorb as much as we can, or don't absorb it as well as we used to be able to. So just little tweaks, focusing on whole foods, whole foods are going to have nutrients. They're going to have fiber. So it's just starting there is a really good place, because it's going to kind of trickle down into other ways in terms of eating. So when we look at digestive health, and I have 3 chapters on nutrients, digestive health, the bulk of, not the bulk, but a lot of the book is how should we be eating? What should we be looking at when we're looking at our food? It's really important that we get enough protein. It's really important that we get enough fiber. It's really important that we make sure that we're hydrated. Drinking enough plays a big role too in terms of how we eliminate. How does our hydration help to eliminate things from our colon, right? And making sure that you're going to the bathroom every single day, that you are pooping every single day. And it's key. And if you're not, please speak to somebody that can help you, or try. I give so many different tips in the book of what can help you go to the bathroom more regularly. But if you need extra help, see someone, perhaps a dietitian or nutritionist, who can help you in that area.
I think that's so important. And one of the areas that is missed out on is detoxification, the elimination of toxins, clearing the toxins out of the body. We know that we clear toxins in 3 pathways only from the body: urine, stool, and sweat. And oftentimes, if one of those three is backed up, one of those three is not working the way that it should be, then the onus or the burden falls on the other two. And for a lot of people, we're not drinking enough water for urine to clear everything out. Not everything becomes completely water soluble. It needs to go out with the bile salts and the stools. Sweat is a huge area, but for a lot of people, sweat doesn't happen as easily because maybe they're not moving quite as much. Let's talk about, I want to get into this idea of movement, and not necessarily exercise, not necessarily like aerobic versus strength training versus like, how do we need to do this? But what role does movement play in helping to move things along, to improve digestive health, to improve muscle capabilities, to improve cardiovascular capabilities? Let's talk a little bit about movement.
Movement is huge. And especially, and from a gut standpoint, I mean, even, you hear all the time, like you can jump on a mini trampoline, right? Because we need things to help move our lymph system. Our lymph system is what takes things out of our body. So it doesn't have its own mechanism. We need to actually help it along. So by moving, that helps our body to detoxify, to get rid of the things that our body no longer needs. The other thing that's important about movement is that a lot of women will have joint pain and musculoskeletal syndrome or symptoms of menopause. And when we don't move, we can become stiffer. So moving every single day, and whatever that looks like for you, is really important. Also, movement is really key for blood sugar regulation because we are more prone to something called sarcopenia, which is our muscles start to deteriorate. So our muscles, our bones now also really important. So that comes more with strength training. So it's important that we move because for blood sugar regulation in particular, especially women who are in menopause, and if you have PCOS, we need to work a little bit harder to get this done, right? To get the glucose, which is the sugar in our blood, into our muscles. We want to make sure that, and to get it in there so that our blood sugar doesn't kind of spike too high and we keep it more balanced, movement plays a key role. So for example, after you eat dinner or lunch, going for a walk, helping your body to get that glucose into the cells is really key, and movement is a key for that. So I'll give you a really good example for personally. So I was writing my book for a very long time, and I'm very open about this, that it created a lot of stress for me because I was always on deadlines, and I went to the gym. I was like, I'm not giving up my gym. I'm going to the gym, but I didn't get out and walk as much as I normally would. And now the book is done and I'm so excited and it's phenomenal. It is so good. This is like the book that you want to keep on your bedside or gift it to your friend, gift it to your doctor, please. Gift it to a healthcare practitioner, gift it to any woman who is in perimenopause or menopause. So, but now that my book is done, I'm like, I'm going to go out more. I'm going to get exercise. I'm going to do what I can. And on Sunday, I went for a 3-hour walk. And now I am very adamant about my blood sugar because I'm PCOS, because it was a little bit higher than I wanted it to be. And because I'm dealing with insulin resistance, all of that together, I'm like, I'm going to go for my 3-hour walk. My blood sugar was so beautiful because I went for that walk. I'm eating a certain way. I'm really being mindful of what I'm putting in my body. And I always have been. But because I have to work harder at it, because I have PCOS, I was like, and I could see it in real time, right? I could see my blood sugar, what it was doing. I wear a continuous glucose monitor. I've been wearing it now for a few weeks. And I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. Like glucose was beautiful. It went right where it needed to go. Movement was the biggest factor on that particular day for me.
I'm going to attest to this. I'm wearing my CGM right now as well. And I cannot dig further into this. Like, this is so huge. If you are a data person, if you are cool with not allowing that data to drive an emotional wedge down into your chest, but rather empower you to make changes, a CGM is so freaking powerful. Female, male, does not matter. Get to know your body. A lot of that information that's out there is good, but it's general. And you don't know your personal situation. You don't know what drives your blood sugar up or down until you do this, until you get to know you as an N of one person and get to know what your body responds to well. I was talking to you about this earlier. I went on a bike ride yesterday because we had great weather finally in Toronto, and I was able to jump on my bike and went out for a little over an hour, wonderful, sunlight and all of this. And my blood sugar was optimized, literally optimized through it and for the rest of the day because I went out on my bike. And it can be as simple as walking. It can be as simple as doing 10 squats after your meal, some sort of movement where it doesn't require, muscle is unique because muscle doesn't require insulin to get the glucose into it. That's really, really special. We don't need to spike insulin if we're using muscle effectively. And so movement plays a really important role. And it ties so well to this idea of regulating your blood sugar as being this important piece that you didn't realize during your journey early on, that this was the piece to the puzzle that needed to be optimized. So if you are up for it on a validation side of things, something that I'm so big on when I talk about wearable devices, a CGM can be an absolute game changer to help you understand what is actually happening in your body and how these things are affecting you. Foods, movement, stress, all of these things play a huge role here.
Huge. And if you can't get you can't get a CGM, then you can ask your doctor maybe for to prick your finger, right? Like there are other things that you could do. You could check it in blood. And generally CGMs will show a little bit higher blood sugar than it would when you prick your finger. So you can ask them for that as well. But just understanding what's happening to your blood sugar, what's your morning fasting glucose? You can't check insulin, unfortunately, in a wearable. I wish we could, but we can't.
I think we're getting there. I think
I
at
hope
some
so.
point in the next 6 months to 12 months, we should have both glucose and insulin being tested for on these
That would
things.
be amazing. If
Yeah.
we could actually test that, but we can test glucose. So it's really important. And ask your doctor for a fasting insulin test because that insulin will generally be higher than it will show as glucose actually. So, and that could be for years and your glucose may not be high. So it's a good idea to understand both.
This is huge, and I want to continue on the diet, nutrition side of things a little bit. You dig in heavily on hydration, on phytoestrogens, on whole foods, on making sure that you're feeding the microbiome and your own body really well. You mentioned protein, and I think a lot of people are hearing about this. They're becoming aware of protein as this important tool. You mentioned fiber. We got deep into that, which is great. Let's talk about that protein piece.
Sure. So protein is really important for a lot of different things. It helps to wake up our brain. It helps to balance blood sugar. It helps with muscles, with bone health. So it's important for a lot of different things. It helps us keep us full. So I know if I'm not eating enough protein, and this is a really great gauge, ladies. If you're eating a meal and you're still snacky or hungry after, you may have not had enough protein at that meal or fiber, right? Or both. So it's really important that we get enough protein for all those reasons and more. Now, in my book, and Lisa and I went really deep on this because it's very frustrating if you look at the research. So because we're so research focused, we look at the research and it's all over the place in terms of how much protein we women in perimenopause and menopause need. It literally is all over the place. And so what we did was we did a lot of math calculations and numbers and data. And what we did is we came up with a formula that we felt was a fair formula for women to abide by or to at least start with. So if you are 140 pounds or less, the starting point for protein for you based on assuming 3 meals a day is 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal. Starting point. If you're 140 pounds or if you're more than 140 pounds, then starting point would be 25 to 30 grams per meal starting point, assuming 3 meals a day. Then you want to adjust it accordingly. So how active are you? What are your personal goals? How tall are you? How much do you weigh? So as we mentioned, there's a lot of different factors that come into play. And that to us was a very fair formula based on looking at all the different research. And you can use macro counters. There are things I give in the book. I give a few examples in the book of what you could do to help you on that journey so that you can understand how much your specific body needs. And I can't stress enough the importance of protein, but you don't want too much protein, right? So that's the thing too. We can get an overabundance of it. We don't want that either. We want the right amount for our bodies. And I'm a massive advocate of balance. I really am a massive advocate of balance, and also that we're the captain of our own ship. So even though somebody tells you maybe, oh, you should do this, you should do that, there is no shoulds. It's what do you want to do? What does your body want? How do you feel? And like you said, Dr. Habib, before, there's so much information out there. you need to do what works for your body. Our N of one, and I'm a huge advocate of being an N of one. And what that means is your personal experience with your body. Nobody could tell you what you need. You have to be the one to say, this is what I need. We can have guidelines. There's incredible guidelines in my book, and I highly recommend reading it so that you understand the guidelines, like getting enough protein, making sure we're fiber. Like we have a whole balanced protocol that actually touches on all the things that we feel women in perimenopause and menopause need, like balancing our blood sugar, adding more fiber, loading up on protein, adding good quality fats, right? That's an important one too. We need good fat, nurturing digestion, like we talked about, choosing more plants and ensuring you're hydrated. So those are the basic principles. And then from there, you adjust it to your body accordingly.
Yeah, you really, as individuals that are empowered, we need to take control of our own health. And I think this is one of those things that we need to start listening to what our body's trying to tell us, and not what our emotions are trying to tell us, but rather how you feel when you eat a certain thing, how you feel when you do a certain type of workout. What does it do for you during that day? Do you feel more regulated? Do you feel more capable, like you have greater capacity to handle stress? Or do you feel like it's creating a shift in you individually that is one that you don't want to experience? And when you become aware of this, when you become conscious, when you pay attention to how you are personally feeling, and yes, it can be very difficult when you're dealing with the symptoms of perimenopause, I imagine, and you're dealing with emotional, seemingly distress. It can be very challenging, but this is where data points can help to take a lot of that emotion out of it. So where possible, I'm a huge fan of bringing these data points in, knowing that like there's a formula. If you're under 140 pounds, then like 20 to 25 grams is a great number to aim for per meal if you're doing 3, 25 to 30 if you're over that weight. And we want to, I think, provide these guidelines with the intent of this is a starting point. And then you say, okay, I did 30 grams and I didn't feel great, but at 24, 25, I felt really good. And you found a number that worked for you and you were able to move effectively and your blood sugar was checked and everything looked good. Having data points takes the emotion out of it. And I think that is so helpful in the journey of really taking back control so that you're not relying on how you feel in that moment to determine what your next step is. Does that sound reasonable?
No, well said. I love it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Let's dig into that mindset piece because I think, and you got into this quite a bit, and I was mentioned. Thank you.
Yes, you are my book. I'm very grateful for your help in chapter 6, right?
Of course,
it's all
yeah.
about stress and anxiety, and to me, you are the expert on the vagus nerve. So of course, I would come to you to ask for a quote.
So let's talk about stress and creating regulation within the nervous system during this menopausal period for a lot of females. Let's talk about what people can do. How can women use this transitional period to really reconnect with who they are and use this as a positive or use this as an opportunity to create that positive shift?
So from a standpoint of the nervous system, it's really so I mentioned before that we have published research on women in perimenopause and menopause. We know we're more stressed now than we were before, and we're less able to cope with it. And women in general, actually, we feel stress more intensely than men do. And when we go into perimenopause and menopause, and our hormones like our estrogen and progesterone start declining, start going down, it makes it even harder. And it's harder for us to cope with stress that's going on. So we have to be extra mindful of how do we help to regulate our nervous system, because we're kind of coming into it from, a standpoint of it's harder for us. We feel it more intensely as well. But also now when our hormones, because it's super tied into our hormones, once those start to decrease, it makes it even harder. Again, compounded, lucky us. So we have to be very mindful. And in terms of doing that, what are ways that we can help to relax, what we can help to stimulate the parasympathetic part of our nervous system more so than the sympathetic, right? It's like kind of that balance, which I know you probably talk about all the time. So one of the things we talked about digestion earlier. One of the things that we want to do before we eat, because when we're stressed and we eat, that could be cortisol. When we're stressed, our adrenals release cortisol. it could be one of the reasons why our digestive system becomes disrupted, because high cortisol levels will actually impair our digestion. So again, and this is chronically high I'm talking about, because cortisol is really important for a lot of things, but I'm talking chronically high, living in the sympathetic nervous system mode. So if we could take a few deep breaths before we eat, just relax ourselves, 3, 5 breaths before we eat, be mindful and intentional with it to relax, that could be helpful and may help us digest our food better. Going for walks in nature. We now know that research shows that we can help balance or regulate cortisol by going for a walk in nature, going for a walk around the block, spending time with people that you love and not so much with people maybe you don't, putting down boundaries, right? No is a full sentence, as Jane Fonda says. So being able to understand what triggers us and what doesn't. And this is something, I talk about this in the book. This is something to me that has been very blatant in terms of how I handle or how I'm affected by stress. So in the past, I would love to walk like dramas, movies, right? Like suspenseful movies. Now I can't do it anymore. Like if there's a movie, I have to literally, if there's a movie that is extremely suspenseful or creating stress for me, I either have to know what happens at the end so that it doesn't affect me the same way. Like I don't need to be surprised anymore. I'm like, okay, what happens? Is that person, what happens to that person in the end, right? Do they survive? Do they not? Just tell me, because it'll really be a good thing for my nervous system. Or I end up walking out. So I've become very cognizant of how I'm affected by certain things around me. And I can't always, but I try my best to mitigate it. So trying not to be on social media before bed, trying if the news stresses you out, maybe not watching it at certain times, or maybe getting it from another source or learning it elsewhere. Or maybe not watching that movie that you were able to watch before. And maybe now you're focusing more on love stories and comedies. So being mindful of how you're affected and how it affects your nervous system is really key, and something that I've been playing with and toying with over the last several years. And I find that it makes a really big difference in terms of how we can cope and handle with stress. And also communication. I find, especially if you're talking mindset, communication, and especially as we talk about in chapter 12, going into perimenopause and menopause affects a lot of relationships. I have an entire survey on men's perspective of menopause that I'm published on, and this affects everybody. This affects women going through it. It affects our partners, and communication is really at the core of what's important as we do go through this phase of life. Because for a lot of us, it's very hard as women to explain, perhaps, because a lot of us, we don't know what's happening to our body, right? So we can't really verbalize what's happening when we don't really understand it or know. So that's another reason why I wrote chapter 12 actually with my mother, who is a therapist for more than 35 years. She specializes in trauma. She is one of the smartest women that I know that comes to mindset and self-love, self-care, relationships. So this is, again, based on research, and I wrote it in conjunction with somebody who's had 35 years of experience in this area. And communication is really important. So I would say if you're able to communicate, if you're able to understand what's happening, talk about it with those around you. It could be your partner, it could be your colleagues, your boss. Having communication and being able to verbalize what you're going through and feeling can help to make a really big difference on your mindset, because it feels good when we're able to talk about something, right? If you're able to share things, and it doesn't have to do with everyone, pick and choose. It could be your therapist. It could be your best friend. It doesn't matter, your partner. But try to speak to someone around it so that it can help you to understand and at least feel supported now that you're going through this phase of life.
That is so important here. And on the movie side of things, that hit close to home, because my wife very similarly has gotten into the Hallmark and those Netflix style, because she's like, I don't need the drama, I don't need the stress. It's a lot on me. And my youngest daughter is particularly stressed when she's watching a movie, like when Cruella's guys came and took the Dalmatians and she lost her mind. So these things happen, right? Because what's happening is the perception is that it's happening to you, or it's happening in and around you, and it's creating a physical symptom while you're watching. And so it's important to create an experience that doesn't create that stress or enable you to go through these experiences so that you're not unintentionally pushed into this sympathetic state when it's not beneficial for you.
And it happened. And it was such the feeling I got when it happened, I was watching a movie and I was like, I can't do this. It's just not worth it. And even watching, I'm watching a series right now called Everwood. I'm loving it. Like, and I agree with the whole like Hallmark movies is like the more like they're so less stress, right? And it's always the same, right? But I even asked my mom because she watched Everwood before me, and it's a great show, and I'm loving it. But there's one part that I just got to, and I said to my mom, "What happens to this character? Because if something bad happens, I just don't want to watch it anymore." She's like, "No, it's fine." I was like, "Okay." So I got the answer in advance, and I'm okay with it. And by the way, I don't like. Not a lot of people are talking about it because. And I'm talking about it now because it's something that I'm personally experiencing, but it's something I feel that we can control. There's a lot we can't, right? Like there's a lot as we go into this space. You're like, I can't control this, I can't control that, but there's a lot we can. And this is one thing that we can help to control and to help regulate our nervous system.
No question about it. I want to speak to the women who feel like they're dismissed, like when they go to their doctor and their doctor's like, it just is what it is. There's no big deal. Live with it. Tough it out. Do what you got to do. And I think that's happened a lot. I think it happened a lot in the past. It's happening less than it was, but it doesn't mean that it's good in its current situation or current state. What advice would you give to women that are going through this experience where they don't know where to turn? They come to their doctor and their doctor's like, just do what you got to do. Like, I don't know what to say to you, or they don't understand it themselves. What can your work and your book bring to these people to help them overcome these challenges?
First of all, I love this question. Brilliant question. And a couple of things. So number one, I'm published, one of the surveys that I'm published on is women's insights. So we called it doctor visits. So what happens when women are going to their doctor, healthcare provider, and sharing how they're feeling? We know, according to our research, that 40% of women are dismissed by their healthcare providers. And that's a big number. We also know that women are going to their doctor anywhere from 2 to 5+ times. And 4+ and 5+ times, that represents 17 and 18% of women, which is a very large number. So we know that women are being dismissed. We know that there are old myths that exist, like, oh, you can't be in perimenopause or menopause, you're too young in your 40s and 50s. I mean, we hear that all the time. And we're like, too young? You could start perimenopause as early as 35. And it generally will last a decade, up to could be 14 years before you go into menopause. So you're not too young, even in your 30s. Or another thing we're told often is that women are told just deal with it. It's a natural part of life. There's nothing you could do. Again, nothing could be further from the truth. There is so much you could do. So what I share with women and what I talk about in the book is please find a provider that understands you. And I think that's the most important thing. And it's okay, by the way, because I know a lot of us, and for many of us, especially if you're in Ontario or Quebec, you're in Canada or elsewhere in the US, there's a couple of things that might be in your way. It's very hard to find a doctor in certain provinces here in Canada. In the US, it could be other issues involved, insurance and costs. So there's so many different things that are involved when it comes to finding a doctor or healthcare provider that gets it. However, with nowadays, there are doctors that understand menopause more so. And there are also telehealth companies that are really focusing on this. So finding the right healthcare provider for you that gets it is critical, because now we know helping you when you're in perimenopause can make a really significant difference as to when you go into menopause. So if you're getting the help you need earlier on, gosh, I want that for you, because I never got that. I never understood it. So that is my biggest hope, that you're able to understand what's happening. So from the book standpoint is I provide you with a lot of that information that you could then take that to your doctor, and everything that we talk about in the book, it's all based on research and science. I'm not, again, a lot of personal stories and experience, because that's how we learn and that's how I share, but also based on science and fact and data. So you could take this book and for example, I have a whole chapter on research. Chapter 2 is all about my research. This is data that's been published. I only talk about the published research. So you could take this to your healthcare provider and say, here's the symptoms. Here are the list of symptoms. I have itchy ears. I've been complaining about it. We've checked it out. We know it's not nothing else is causing it. It's a perimenopause or menopause symptom. So now you have the tools and the data to be able to back up how you're feeling. It's extremely empowering. And that's why I wrote this book, because I wanted the women who read it and the healthcare practitioners who read it to understand and to be empowered to ask for the right things. Because unfortunately, Dr. Habib, women are dismissed. We are really dismissed. And I'm going to give you a great example. I've been doing this for 26 years. I've been helping women in health and wellness for a really long time. I am not new to this game. And I have heard from so many women how they're dismissed by their healthcare provider or they weren't allowed to do certain things when they asked. It never happened to me personally in terms of like asking for blood tests or anything until a couple of months ago. And I went to my doctor. My old doctor retired. I loved her, but she retired. And I went to go see a new doctor. He had been in the industry for a doctor for 30, 40 years, a really long time. And I was telling him how I was feeling. And I know I've had like my thyroid is an issue for me. It has been since I'm in my 20s. And I know when I start to feel certain things, either at Hashimoto's, I have a flare, or I know my TSH is too high. Like I know my body really well. And by the way, this is what I do for a living. Like I tell people, I'm not a doctor, but I share what to ask your doctor for. So I asked him for a blood test for my thyroid. He was like, and I was telling him because there were certain things I was feeling, like my hair was changing. I'm like, I know my TSH is high. Like I need to get in. And he's like, no, it's not related. I'm like, no. I know that when my hair is coming out more so when it normally does, it's my thyroid. He's like, it's not related. It's telling you it's not related. And I'm like, I'm telling you it is. And he didn't give me the test. He would not. I had to go to my other doctor to give me the test. I walked out of there. I was so upset because I'm like, now I understand how women are feeling. But why as women do we have to fight to get a blood test when we know our body best? Like he was basically dismissing me and gaslighting me, saying that I don't know my body. And I was telling him, yeah, I do. Please listen to me. And he still wouldn't give me what I needed. So it was extremely frustrating for us. So yes, this book will help you when you go to your doctor. Again, it's based on research. It's based on fact. It's not based on like, oh, I just said this. So I'm hoping that it empowers women and their healthcare practitioners to understand us better. And also, you mentioned earlier, Dr. Carrie Jones, an incredible naturopath, as well as Dr. James Simon, who's a medical doctor, has been in menopause he's a gynecologist helping women in menopause for over 40 years. They wrote my foreword. A lot of the testimonials that I have are from medical doctors that have read my book that has said, and what's incredible is they came back and they said, not only was this incredible for my patients, but this book is incredible for my peers, my colleagues, my other doctor friends who I want them to understand what is happening to women in perimenopause and menopause. And that's why this book is so powerful.
It's both very scary to think that doctors can completely knock down what you're saying is happening within your body and not be able to put two and two together. And then know that you can find practitioners that are out there that do understand these things. And I think that's a key thing here for me is I want to help empower people to say, you know what, if this doctor doesn't understand or they're not truly willing to listen to what I'm experiencing, I'm going to go talk to somebody else. This is true for women, men, doesn't matter. If you need to talk to your doctor and your doctor dismisses what you are saying without putting any effort into researching or digging deeper into it, or they just truly don't know, then the onus, unfortunately and fortunately, drops on you to go out and find somebody that you can go to, that you can share with, because communication is huge. And if you can't feel like you can communicate with your doctor without some sort of judgment or dismissal, then you're going to create stress within your body and it's going to perpetuate this issue for you and you're going to suffer more. And I think that's ultimately the goal of what Nourishing Menopause as a book, as a thought process is can we minimize how much you have to suffer by making some very simple dietary, lifestyle, nervous system regulatory changes and get the testing that is actually beneficial to help you understand your body best so that you can be the best N of one that you possibly can be and understand who you are and then go out and be the best person in the world that you possibly can be. And I think that is, for me, what I'm taking from all of this, from having gone through the book and have this wonderful conversation with you. I'd love for you to sum up in final words as much as I've kind of already done so. Take your opportunity here to share what does this book represent for you and for everybody who reads it.
So for me, like I said, and I probably said it several times, is I feel like it's a book of empowerment. It's a book of understanding what's happening to your body now. It's a book of validating how you're feeling. It's a book of supporting you now that you're going through this phase of life. Because one of the questions I'm often asked is, when will menopause end? And menopause never ends. Once we go into menopause, we're in it for the rest of our life. However, I believe what women are really asking is, when will the symptoms end? And there's a big distinction between the two. because like puberty, once you go through puberty, you're always in, you're in it for the rest of your life, and the same for menopause. So that's why it's really important now, more than ever, that we look to our food, our nutrition, our lifestyle, our exercise. How are we managing stress, our sleep? We look to all of that as a baseline to how we're going to live for the next, 1/3 to half of our life in this phase of life. So we have a lot of life left in us, ladies, and we want to make sure we are thriving in this phase of life, that we are feeling our best. And this is what Nourishing Menopause will do. It will help. So it's Nourishing Menopause, powerful nutrition and lifestyle strategies to feel your best. And this is where you will notice a difference when you start focusing on what's happening to our sleep. Like, how do we sleep better? Like, not only is the book chock full of education, because that's who I am in research, but it's so filled with tips. There's to-dos. You will walk away with actionable tips. Like, every chapter is, we had to cut out so much. I laugh. When I first submitted the manuscript to Simon & Schuster, I'm not even kidding you, there were some chapters that were over 150 pages. Like, it is chock full of my information, my experience. Like, it's 26 years of my experience as a health and wellness advocate and 10 years as a menopause expert. Like, it is so filled with information that is so unique to what I do and what Lisa Tsakos does, because we've had all of that experience before we got here, right? We were already in health and wellness for a really long time. So we provide you with actionable tips. You walk away, the day you read the book, that night, you're already implementing strategies that are in there and recommended. So it's really filled with things that you could do right away. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to do it. Like, you literally just be like, oh, okay, I should drink more water. How much water should I drink? So lots of different tips in that.
I love this. I think this has been such a powerful and beneficial conversation for everybody who's listened. And I'm sure that everybody can take away some great tips and a recommendation to share this book with a loved one, or for themselves or for their doctor, to help them become empowered and become aware and be actually educated on what the research truly says about menopause, and the fact that we don't have to suffer to the extent that so many people unfortunately are. Where can everybody find the book, and when is it out?
So it comes out May 5th, and you can buy it anywhere that you buy a book, whether you buy it at bookstores or you buy it on Amazon or online. It literally is sold everywhere across Canada and the US.
Amazing. This was such a great conversation, Andrea. I love having you on. We will have you on again at some point very soon, and we'll be able to discuss new research and new data and new empowerment strategies to help people create these positive changes. And I just love having you on here. So thank you for joining us, for sharing your amazing work. And for anybody who wants to follow you, go check out Andrea Donsky on Instagram as well, because there's lots of great information that pops up there as well.
And TikTok. I kind of live on TikTok.
Oh, wow.
And we have an amazing community on TikTok. And then we also have, our website is nourishingmenopausebook.com. You can check it out there. There's resources there, and you can download, there's PDFs. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can get there too.
Great stuff. This was amazing. If you got to this point in the podcast, thank you for listening. Share this episode with 3 people who you think could utilize this information. I honestly think that this is going to help people live healthier lives, and I want to empower people to do so. So share this info with as many people as you feel you can. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you all on the next one.